Ellie and Pete are they're a fixer-upper type couple, and they've sort of delayed having kids, and it sort of starts as a joke, which is very parallel to Sean Ander's own life, that they start to discuss, well, what if we adopted kids or we fostered children instead? And it's the story of that and what happens in meeting these children and the journey that they go on to, have this instant family. Sean and John reached out pretty early on, late last year, and we just started to talk and chat, and I read it and I was so intrigued, and then talked to Sean a lot, it's obviously his story, and that was really amazing to speak to him and to hear what happened and his journey and his adventure. I met with his wife, Beth, which was fantastic. I met with a lot of social workers. To be honest, I don't know if I would have done it if it hadn't been, because it gives it an authenticity and a sensitivity and a intimacy that you wouldn't have otherwise. And so for me, that was really important, and a huge part of agreeing to be a part of it was the fact that this was Sean's story. So we could make sure we did it right, and wanted to tell his story. It's so important to him. So it makes me feel like it's important to do a really good job, more than ever. So for me, I'm not sure I would have done it if it wasn't a true, a semi-autobiographical kind of thing. It is such a sensitive subject, and you really want to be able to tell it in an authentic way. So having him at the helm was very important. There is a tension between mother and daughter, and that's a really interesting thing to explore, particularly with when you're fostering a child. So, and we've had great consultants on the film, particularly Mairead, who's a terrific young woman who was in the system and was fostered and then adopted, and at an older age, so at 13. So she's been a great help too in terms of that relationship and what it's like and how complicated it is and fantastic it is, and yeah. Pete and Ellie, they navigate through everything. I mean, they have a honeymoon period, which is very common that people go through, and then everything gets really hard and really complicated and really challenging. And that is just with behavioural stuff with children. Look, I have 2 kids. I know what it's, you go through these age stages of just they just go crazy. And so there's that, and there's also the relationship the kids still have with their biological mother, and that's also that happens when you're fostering as a foster parent, as a parent who fosters. So they go through those challenges. And again, the challenges, really a lot of it lies with the Lizzy character because she's the parent. Early on, Sean really tonally discussed the film, saying, look, it's going to be something that they'll find in the edit, but he always wanted this film to be accessible, to be fun, and for lots of people to watch it. So they want to, foster children. And comedy is such a huge accessibility. So that was really tonally very important to him from the start, is to try to make it a family film that really, in the vein of like a Parenthood or something. Obviously that's a very different premise, conceit, but tonally how that managed to be very, really dramatic and moving, but hilarious. So that's a real inspiration for me as well, tonally. But we still have to navigate the scenes with the comedy, and again, it's going to be discovered in the edit, really, of how far they go. They meet 2 social workers, Karen and Sharon, who are played by Octavia Spencer and Tig Notaro, who shepherd them through this whole experience, and they find a match for them with the children and so on and so forth. And they do a lot of groups with other, therapy groups with other parents to discuss, the highs and lows of the whole experience. And so Sean and John were thrilled because Octavia Spencer and Tig Notaro agreed to do it. And they are, brilliant. They're so funny. They're such, great comedic pair. They're obviously so different, and Tig is a stand-up comic, so she just kills me, but she's very empathic and sensitive, and so she can do the dramatic stuff brilliantly. And Octavia's just a delight and brilliant. So I was so thrilled when they agreed to sign on. And they bring an element of comedy, obviously, to those scenes, but also being able to ground it, you know. It's been terrific working with Mark. You know, I think he commits to something when it's my first time working with him, obviously, or even meeting him. And when he's there, he's just completely 110% committed, which is fantastic. He's naturally very funny, his intensity is very earnest and very hilarious. And I think we've, just more and more found our groove as a couple. And the whole thing of like trying to be on the same page is really important when you're doing this, when you start to foster children. So that's something that is sort of a constant joke between the two of them. But they essentially have a good marriage, a really good marriage. So that was something that I hope we've achieved that you can kind of believe from the beginning as well. Isabela Moner plays Lizzy, and she's very experienced and just has great access to her emotional life, and she has a toughness about her too that is really believable, that you need to have for that character. And she's gorgeous. she's such a talented girl. She's got, so excited for her to be doing something really dramatic and funny and everything. Gustavo plays Juan, and he's so lovely. Gustavo, he's got the most vulnerable quality to him, which is really heartbreaking, like instantly heartbreaking. You just kind of fall into his eyes, and he's very vulnerable, and the character's really vulnerable. He's always sort of bursting into tears, and he really wants a family, that he's so motivated to just stay and be a family, and that's really evident. And he's just, he's got it written all over his face. Julianna Gamiz plays Lita, and she's a firecracker. I call her El Jefe. She's the boss. She's the boss, man. She just comes in, lets everyone know what's happening. And she's just a really, really fun and lovely girl, and really just a ball of energy, real firecracker, just like the character. So she's gorgeous, yeah. The stakes are really high for him in this job. He really wants to tell this story. It means so much to him. So we don't stop until he gets what he needs, what he wants. And I've loved that. I've loved working with him. He's very specific and really focused and very open, candid. So any question is allowed, about the situation. So that, as for an actress is, or for an actor is, just brilliant. It was funny, we were talking the other day, and he was saying, he's going to have to be a huge part of the promotional experience of this film, and he's not used to that, but it's his story. But he was so motivated to do it. He was like, I can't wait to start talking about this and telling people what a great, the experience of it and how challenging it is, but how rewarding it is. And he's so motivated to tell his story to hopefully get people to consider to foster, to adopt. We are surrounded on this film with people who are either social workers or have been in the system, or who are currently in the system, who are fostering to adopt, particularly Alison Maxon. She's an incredibly brilliant social worker who's just been so helpful. She organised a dinner with women who had fostered to adopt for me, and I met all these brilliant women, and they were so candid and shared all their stories. Laurie Hernandez, one of them, who's a school principal who's just brilliant, who's fostered and adopted one girl, and has two girls who she's fostering to hopefully adopt. So we've been surrounded by brilliant people who are just really helpful and willing to help, and who want to just get this message out and get it out in a really positive, funny, accessible way, so people will, consider it. The more people I've sort of spoken to, the more people have revealed, like, oh, I was adopted, or we fostered a child when stories are slowly being revealed throughout this shoot, which has been quite, interesting. I was like, wow, it's all around, and that's been great. I just so wonderful to hear all these stories, and I think everybody feels invested in the project, perhaps in a way that is unique to this specific story, you know. I've learnt so much about, look, from the system and how it works, from doing this film, to the people involved, to the experiences, to the outcomes. I can't put a frame around it, what I've learnt. It's been a really interesting, insightful, emotional experience. There's a lot of stigma around it. I think there's probably a lot of people who are uneducated about it, like myself, who, you know, and this film will hopefully just open that up and break it open, and to sort of realise how rewarding it can be and challenging, and how wonderful it is to give, you know, these kids the opportunity to have a family.
Hey there, here's today's daily fact. The snow in The Wizard of Oz is asbestos. In that famous poppy field scene in The Wizard of Oz, the snow coming down is calming to Dorothy and her posse, but they should have probably been far less relaxed, as these were actually asbestos-based fake snowflakes, a popular Christmas decoration throughout the United States and Europe at the time. Now click here below to subscribe for more great content.